Welcome back to Talking Devils podcast. I am your host Keane. Today, this is our new podcast here on a Wednesday night. So this is me and Marcus, and we're going to be here talking about all things Manchester United. We're going to be talking all things Ralf Rangnick. We're going to be talking about Manchester United season and going forward. So we've a lot to deep dive into today. So please smash the like button on the video, hit that subscribe button. We have a lot to talk about here this evening in terms of Ralf Rangnick's impact on German football, what he's going to bring to Manchester United, and how his season is going so far with Manchester United since he's taken over. Marcus, first of all, we would all know you from your time playing with Manchester United's youth team and also reserve team. You're captain of a very good reserve team with Manchester United. Just before we deep dive into Ralf Rangnick and what he's going to bring to Manchester United, first of all, just talk to us about your time at Manchester United and kind of how that came about.
Yeah, hello everybody. First of all, I had an amazing 3 years. My first year started really well. We went to the Northern Ireland Milk Cup. We won it straight away with the likes of Dennis Simpson, Floribert Galula. I think also Fraser Campbell was with us. So we had a really good team, Chris Eagles. It was the first big tournament I was playing for United, and we won it the first time since the likes of Beckham and Scholes back then. So there was a big hope on us making it through the ranks. And in my first 6-9 months, I found myself really well. Everybody was really nice to me. I had a really good time. I adapted really well to the English football, to the English lifestyle. It was for the first time I was away apart from my family, so it was not an easy time. And then there came my first big injury where I dislocated my collarbone. And I was out for about 6 to 9 months, and this obviously was a little bit disappointed, and it also took me a long time to recover. And in my last year, I came back to the level I expected from myself, and also the club expected from myself. I was captain of the reserve team, and we had a brilliant year with the likes of Piqué, with the likes of Rossi. With the likes of Johnny Evans. So we had a really good team then. And unfortunately, at the end of the year, I had a talk with the gaffer, with Sir Alex, and we agreed that it would be better for both sides that if I tried to make it into first team football rather than to do another season with a reserve team. And at that time, I took the decision to go for good. On the other side, if I think about it today, maybe I made a mistake. I should have stayed for 2 more years. Maybe make a loan move to Belgium or whatever. And but that's football. Sometimes you take decisions and they're not really intelligent, especially when you're young. You tend to make decisions more quickly than when you get older in this professional business.
Yeah, football is such a crazy game in terms of injuries can happen at a drop of a hat when you're in the best form of your life. It can happen so quickly and so easily. And like I think it's one thing that people who are football fans don't realize the dedication sometimes of how professional footballers have to work so hard to get to where they are, and then just so quickly an injury can happen, and all of a sudden it can really change the shape of how a footballer's career goes. So you're absolutely right in that regard. We just have a couple of comments coming in here. Wayne Barton is here today.
Hey,
Wayne
Wayne.
says, "Evening, guys. Welcome, Marcus, to the podcast. Looking forward to his insight, and also your former teammate, Lee Lawrence
Lee
says."
Lawrence, yeah, great guy. I enjoyed playing with him. Long time. I think we didn't speak for about 20 years now, so yeah, long time ago.
Absolutely. And Lee says here to Marcus as well, he says, "Yes, Marcus, great to see you on the podcast. Hope you're well." So yeah, look, obviously we have Phil Marsh and Lee Lawrence here in the podcast. We talk every Friday on this show, and we do talk about a lot about Manchester United, about how our tactics are. We always talk about what's going on in terms of the team setup. But Marcus, it's great that you're here this evening, because in terms of Ralf Rangnick, he's had obviously a massive impact on German football in terms of his style of play, in terms of pressing, counter pressing. He's obviously been like the forefather of what Thomas Tuchel and Jurgen Klopp do in terms of the pressing and counter pressing and controlling games of football.
Yeah.
In terms of Ralf Rangnick's impact as such, in terms of what he's done like the Salzburg and the likes of Leipzig, in terms of his impact on the overall German football, what has he done to kind of revolutionize, the pressing game?
Yeah, he's done a lot. He was the first guy who, yeah, we had this idea of playing in this way. His approach was always very aggressive. He tried it with very young players with fresh legs, so they can cover a lot of ground, and obviously they can keep the pace over 90 minutes. That was the basic idea of his game off the ball, and obviously game on the ball is for him also important, that you play a dominant football. So he was the first guy really in German football who gave the off the ball view a bigger moment. So that means in German football, every time we talked about football, it was always the side when you had the ball, but nobody cared really what is happening when you're working against the ball. But this is basically half, 50%, but why not even more important, what you're doing against it. And he was the first guy who really approached it with a very aggressive way. And also he was the first guy, who, as I said before, to do it with unknown young players. And obviously he helped the young players also to make a big career, a great career. And he had the good thing about Ralf Rangnick is he has a clear idea of what he wants and where he wants to go. That's one side of the medal. The other side is, you know that when you want something, you also don't know what you don't want. So I think for the older players, it's not always easy to cope with that style of play, especially in England when you play every 3-4 days. You could see that with Liverpool, with obviously Jurgen Klopp. He's one of the guys who adapted the playing style of Ralf Rangnick. He learned from him, and you see that also Liverpool, obviously they're still doing good, but they cannot keep that up. They cannot keep that pace for over 3-4 years on a high standard. And obviously the problem United has at the moment is they're looking for their identity. Since Sir Alex Ferguson is gone, the whole club is restructuring again. And Ole brought a little bit of I would say Sir Alex 2.0 back, and it was a copy of him, and the copy is never as good as the original. We all know that. So that was a little bit the problem of Ole. But what the good thing about Ole was that he brought back the pride and the idea what Manchester United is about. It's about the fans, about bringing up young players with a work ethic. And obviously all the managers before, like Mourinho and everybody else, they always had a different approach. And with Ole, they had the basic idea why Manchester United is as big as it was 20, 30 years ago. And now the approach of Ralf Rangnick is completely different. And the thing with him is he only has another 6 months on his contract, and then he will go back into a strategic position where will help the coach to move on his ideas and his style of play. And I think that the biggest issue for Ralf Rangnick now is that he has to change the players to play the style that he wants. When you just watch in central midfield, you're playing with McTominay and also with Matic. They're not players that adapt to the playing style of Rangnick, because he wants fresh young legs who can cover a lot of space and a lot of ground. And with them two playing there, if Fred is not available, then it's very difficult to play in that 4-4-2. So we saw that also last week when he changed it and he put Bruno back in the number 10 position, which he doesn't like to play normally. And you see that he doesn't have the players yet to play the 100% football he wants.
I think we noticed that, especially in the last Villa game in the FA Cup, that he did go back to a 4-2-3-1, which was kind of, I suppose, the stable of what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer done in his tenure. Yeah. He went back to that in the last game. And I think one of the things that you're absolutely right, I've noticed, is we are getting overrun in midfield, especially with when it was Matic and McTominay in midfield. We didn't have someone to, I suppose, counter press every time we lost the ball, and you could clearly see that. And I think, obviously, with this system, I think Fred is probably going to be an important part of this in these next couple of months, because he's a high energy player. So McTominay, he can be a high energy player, but maybe sometimes his first pass leaves him down, which ultimately we concede possession, and then Matic can't cover because he doesn't have the legs as what he did maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So you're absolutely right.
Especially you have the problem with Ronaldo. Ronaldo, defensively, he's not a player who covers also a lot of ground. And if you don't have the two strikers up front who work a lot, then it's more up to the central midfielders. And if you don't have somebody like Keane and Scholes at that time, when I was there at United, they were running the whole game. They were running the whole team. And the biggest problem United has at the moment when they're playing a 4-4-2, they are struggling with one man down in the middle. So that means they get overrun, like you said. And that is the biggest problem, that in defense, there are a lot of counterattacks coming on them because they lose a lot of balls. And with Sancho and Greenwood, they're also not players that give you defensively, I would say, a lot of runs and a lot of cover, and these are the main issues United has at the moment, that the kind of play Rangnick wants to play, he doesn't have the players for it at the moment. So that will be also a big target to watch now, what players United can bring in the transfer window now or latest in the summer, because obviously in winter it's always more difficult to get players of high standards and of the size that Ralf Rangnick is thinking about. Yeah.
You spoke about January in terms of maybe Ralf bringing in somebody, come into the midfield. Dennis Zakaria from Borussia Mönchengladbach is someone who was highly linked to Manchester United at the minute. He's a very good high-energy midfield player, and he's a very good ball winner in midfield. And he's also very versatile in terms of he can play whole midfield and centre-back as well. Do you maybe think he will be a player maybe suited with the Ralf Rangnick style of play in terms of pressing, counter-pressing, but also winning the ball in the first and second phase?
Yeah, he does, because Ralf Rangnick is looking for players who can play a high intensity over 90 minutes. And he's a player who can do that. And United was struggling in the last games to keep that pace over the whole time. Ralf Rangnick was talking a lot about the physical side of the game, that at the end, it's in your head. When you get tired, the mental freshness is lacking. And that's a problem when you come as a coach and you don't have a pre-season to work with your players. You cannot get them in the shape that you want as a manager. And that is also now a main issue he's facing at the moment. So what he's trying now to get one or two new players in that fit his style of play, and it makes it more easier for all the players around them. So like the players of the likes of Greenwood or Sancho, then they have more space and more freedom up front when a player can win more tackles in midfield and he can cover more ground, and that makes life easier for everybody in that team.
And you're absolutely right. And I think with this, I think Ralf, he's not tied down to one system as well. I think what we did see at Leipzig, that he has reverted to 3 at the back as well. He has reverted to that before. Do you maybe think with this 4-2-2-2 system that we're playing at the moment that Ralf maybe will try something else in terms of maybe 3 at the back to maybe see, can he maybe get more out of this current bunch of players? Let's say, because ideally, that we all know January is a very hard window to buy players. Obviously, look, 2 years ago, Bruno was the exception, bringing him in a couple of years ago. Let's say in this world where we may not bring in maybe the 1 or 2 that Ralf would ideally need, do you maybe think the fact that he has used 3 at the back before, the 3-4-1-2, that he can maybe do that again?
Yeah, but the question is why he does that. It's quite easy, because he doesn't have the 2 center midfielders in front of the back 4 or the back 3 who can cover all the ground. So what he does then, he put an extra man into defense so he can cover the spaces that the 2 center midfielders cannot cover. And that's the problem why he's changing the system. Ralf Rangnick, in every club where they have been successful, he always stick to his 4-4-2. And at the moment he sees that he doesn't have the players for it. So he's trying to change the system a little bit. We also saw playing Bruno on the right or left wing as a defensive position. In offensive position, he was really free to go also inside and play his normal game. But this needs time, It needs time for a player like Bruno with his standard and with his resume that he has. He has to grow into that role, So it takes time. And the style that Ralf Rangnick is demanding is very, very difficult for players like Fernandes and Ronaldo, because it means that they basically have to step down their characters and work for the team. And the character of Bruno and also Cristiano is basically when they have the ball. But the part when you don't have the ball for Ralf Rangnick has the same importance, and that's the biggest key now for the coach, to put that idea in the back of the head. And obviously, as he knows, he doesn't have the players in center midfield. He needs to shift players around so the defense doesn't look as exposed in many ways as we saw in the last few games when they're playing a classical 4-4-2.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. When I look at it, I see Bruno struggling off the ball. Like his positions when we get caught in transition, he's never kind of in the right shape for us to defend when we don't have the ball. And I think you mentioned Sancho as well. I think he's another player who he's very good positionally in terms of when he has the ball and he comes inside, tries to create a chance. But like I think when you look at Greenwood as well, like he's probably more suited to being a 9 in this system rather than one of the attacking midfielders. I think Greenwood would probably be better from playing from the front than in one of them attacking midfield positions. Do you maybe look at Anthony Elanga, Marcus? Because he's someone who Ralf seems to take a liking to, and Ralf really likes working with the young players. And Elanga has a lot of energy, and he's a very aggressive, a very good flair player. Do you maybe think he might get a chance? Because it's looking like at this moment in time that many Manchester United fans are looking at Anthony Elanga and they're saying that maybe he would be a player that suit Ralf Rangnick's system.
Yeah, he is. He's a young player, and Ralf Rangnick especially loves to work with young players, as their character of playing is not fixed as it is with Fernandes, with Bruno, or with Ronaldo. And the problem is that if you demand a very high press, a really high intensity against the ball, the players of Cristiano and Bruno, they're lacking their quality in their offensive part. Sancho is the same. When he was playing at Dortmund, they were used to having the ball like 60, 65, 70%. So that means when your team is in possession, you can recover. But if you play in the Premier League where the intensity and the speed is very high, that means you cannot take your break and your pause during the period of the ball. And that is the biggest issue that at the moment United is facing. They're trying to put quality players on the pitch like Bruno or like Cristiano. But on the other side, Ralf knows that if he puts them on the field, he's lacking a lot of intensity and a lot of pressure against the ball. That's why he's trying to bring in young players who can adapt his playing style. That means that they can get a platform where they can shine, because when younger players, they come into the pitch, basically they do everything. When a Ronaldo or a Fernandes come on the pitch, they come on the pitch to shine, to show what they're potentially doing when they have the ball, but not off the ball. They did that when they were like 15, 20 years ago when they were young. But when you get older, you concentrate more when you have the ball. And that is the problem Ralf Rangnick is facing. And also Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was facing that problem when Ronaldo came. So it's not always the easiest thing to have the biggest players. We could talk also about Barcelona with Messi. Obviously, he did a lot of good stuff. But when they're playing defensively, they're always playing with one man less, So it's always a good part, but there's always a negative side to it.
Yeah, there's always pros and cons. You're absolutely right. And I think, look, when you look at some of these players like Ronaldo, Bruno, probably like Ronaldo more so towards the twilight of his career, you can't teach an old dog new tricks in that respect.
Yeah.
I think
that's also my idea. What I have when Pogba comes back, does he fit to the style of Rangnick? I don't think so. So it will be very interesting to see what they're gonna do with him. Because Paul is also a player who likes to have the ball, and when he doesn't have the ball, sometimes he works hard, sometimes he doesn't. It depends a little bit on his mood. And a coach like Ralf Rangnick, he doesn't like that attitude. So I think there will also be problems created as soon as he will be back fit and in the training again.
Usually we say when you have plenty of players that it's always a good problem, but when you're trying to implement a system, you don't have the players to suit with, maybe it does become a massive one. You mentioned Paul Pogba, and obviously like he's a polarizing figure, but in world football, like we all know his quality. Like he on his day, he's a fantastic footballer, World Cup winner. When you look at this Ralf Rangnick system, if we do persist with 4-2-2, a lot of United fans are saying, does he play in the middle or does he play at the left of the two attacking midfielders? If he is to be implemented in this system and we have to play him, where would you prefer to see Paul when he's back?
I think he only has a chance to play on the wing, because in center of midfield, I don't see him in the style Ralf Rangnick wants to play. But we saw also under Ole that Pogba occasionally was playing on the wing and he did a good job. So it's more up to the attitude that Paul has. If he's willing to work hard for the team and if he's willing to accept that new role, then I think he can be a part. But I think with the mentality and with the mindset that Paul has, I think it will be very difficult. Also with the agent he has, we know that he's not a guy who makes a lot of fun with the clubs if things don't go well, So I see there will be problems created. Yeah.
It's a sticky one for me because you mentioned him playing wide left, and when he played there last season after the Leipzig game, the Champions League, he had his best run of form for United leading up to the Euros last year. They came in Bruno when they did link up, they did do quite well, and that's why we had that unbeaten away from home record, like that stretched for so long. So if Pogba can get into this system, and if he's willing to say like, right, look, I'm willing to play here, and I'm willing to give it up my all for the team, then look, we have a very good footballer, and a committed Paul Pogba is a brilliant Paul Pogba. I think, we all know that.
But even at that time, they were lacking the commitment for defense. They were conceding a lot of goals against them, and that was it's still a problem because United gets too many goals against them. And if you compare them to the big team when we had about 2099, whatever. There was Keane and there was goals in the center of the park, and they were managing the whole problem. So if somebody in the team wasn't working hard enough, he told them to. He made them to work hard. It wasn't the job of the gaffer. And now with the likes of Pogba, Fernandes, Cristiano, you have too many players, and also Sancho, who don't really care about the side of the ball, which is really important in the nowadays. You can see that with Liverpool. Because you have a whole team working against the ball, and it makes a really, really big difference. And now, even with the intensity they're playing for the last few years, they cannot hold that standard. So they're dropping it always a little bit more, and that makes more space for other teams, like Chelsea, for example, who are playing a really good role. The teams of West Ham were really doing a great job. And I think that's an issue United has to face, because on one side, we all want quality players when they have the ball. But I think in nowadays, it's as important to have players who are working against the ball,
Yeah, I think we need, like in any Man United team, whether we're playing 4-4-2, 4-4-5-1, or whatever it may be, we always have players like Ji-Sung Park, Carlos Tevez, Ryan Giggs.
Players they were working for the team, exactly. Yeah, they were team players,
Yeah, like them, Darren Fletcher, players like that, Nicky Butt, them players who are them real stalwarts who win the ball back. And they're the kind of unsung heroes. Obviously, you had Keno and Scholesy who'd run the game and pick.
All the names you mentioned, they have both parts of the game. That's a big thing, And now they only have players who have one side. Nothing against Scott McTominay or against Matic, but they don't have the quality of a Scholesy or of a Keno when they have the ball. And that's the problem United is facing for the last 20 or 25 years. That since these two didn't play in the middle of the park anymore, they were looking for new players to do that, Also Carrick, he was a good player, but he was nowhere near the class of Scholesy or of Keno, and how even to manage the dressing room or the team on the pitch, And these characters, they are so important for a team to be successful, and that makes a difference. If you play a good season, you get on the second or the third place, or you are champion week year in, year out, and that's the biggest issue United has. They're lacking these special players. Yeah,
I think we're lacking a lot of leadership. I think if you look at towards the end of Solskjaer's reign, like where is the manager? Like the captain would usually be the one who would stand up and be counted. Like people used to say, Roy Keane mirrored Sir Alex on the pitch. Like that's who he was. He'd mirror Sir Alex. He was the boss. Yeah. And I think we don't have that right now. Like in terms of real leaders, now you can maybe say Cristiano, like being an experienced player, should be that. Like he's won many trophies. He should be that player. I don't know if he's won us a lot of games this year, especially in Champions League. Like he won us a lot of games, but he can't do it on his own. And this is where you need more characters to complement that one leader. You can't have a dressing room full of players and only have one or two leaders. You need multiple captains in the one dressing room, and I think that's a massive problem, especially for like even an interim manager coming in, like Ralf is.
Yeah, and you need the leaders in the middle of the park. That's also a problem, So if you talk about Ronaldo, he's a leader, yes, but he's 36 years old and he plays as a striker at the moment. So his influence to the central midfielders or to the back four is zero, So he's really, really low, and that makes a big problem with Keno or Scholes in the middle of the park. they were managing everything. I was playing alongside them in the training, and it was amazing. They were basically managing the whole team, with one or two words, even sometimes with the attitude they behaved. And at the moment, I don't see anybody in the United team who's even close to that, and they're lacking leadership. Like you said, it's clear to see. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to come to Greg's comment here because it's on Ralf Rangnick on what he's done, obviously at the two Red Bull clubs. He said with Ralf Rangnick, are United likely to be looking at the smaller leagues for young potential players like what you did with the Red Bull group, as United normally wait for players to get to bigger clubs first?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the idea of Ralf Rangnick, to have players who adapt his style of play. And obviously with the Red Bull group, they're working with young players, even 12, 13 years old. They're working with them to be a Red Bull player. That means to work on both sides of the game, to play very aggressively with a high intensity. And I think this style of play fits the English football very well. So why not? I think it can be a good idea. But I think on the other side as well, United needs to get back to that main idea that always made the club strong, to build young players, to give them a chance, and to put that identity back into the club, to have a main idea, a general idea what United Football Club should stand for, how they should train, how the youth team should play. These are the things that we've been lacking the last 20 years. When I was there, I knew what I had to do. I knew what the idea was. I knew what I had to do when we had the ball, and I knew what I had to do when we didn't have the ball. So there was a clear idea for everybody, and they taught us that every day in training. So there was a general idea and a general behavior to be on and off the pitch. And I think over the last few years, since all the different managers, the general idea or the main idea of how United Football Club should play has been divided into different ideas, and I think with Ralf Rangnick there comes a man back who has a clear idea of the future and a clear strategy how the whole club should work, and how also the youth team should work, because the youth teams are basically they are the future of the club, and it always has been a big point for United, and it has to be for me in the future as well.
Ralf Rangnick is moving in prospectively into a consultancy role in 6 months' time. And he's going to be working alongside the new manager, and obviously with Darren Fletcher and John Murtaugh in the director of football roles as well. Do you maybe think with the new manager that's coming in that Ralf will help kind of rebuild? Obviously, the academy is obviously in a good place. Since Ollie came in, he restructured the academy. Do you maybe think that United's recruitment may, span maybe more kind of in a European place where, like he done with the Red Bull clubs, that their recruitment was very shrewd and they picked up young players? Do you maybe think that he's going to do the same with United, and maybe we're going to pick out more unknown players at first, but then develop them into kind of more world-class footballers?
Yeah, I don't hope that, or I don't think that he will do it with on loan players. I think he will do it bit by bit. I think in the summer he will get a manager that has the same idea, the same strategic way to approach the game on and off the ball, and also to rebuild the whole club. Obviously, it started with a academy, which is the main thing, and I think it's also a clever thing to do, because it always has been the main spirit of United. And I think Ralf Rangnick is a guy who knows that it starts with the young guys in the club, and I think he will try to get, with his connections he has in world football, he will get the best talents all over the world, and to get that spirit back to United, which has been lost for the last 25 years or so, and this is the main thing for me, why I think in the strategic position, Ralf Rangnick is even more crucial and more beneficial to United as he is as a coach now, because as a coach, you always think about the next game. You always think about how to win points. You change your system. You think about one or two players, but as a strategic person, you don't have that pressure. You have the bigger picture. So I think for him, it's a perfect position to be in, and also for United as well. Yeah.
I think especially like if you look post Sir Alex Ferguson, we probably haven't had football and people kind of on the board as such, making them decisions, where we've had kind of Ed Woodward, who would look on the commercial side, does a fantastic job with that. But like obviously now with the new restructuring of Darren Fletcher, John Murtaugh, now we're having Ralf Rangnick come into that consultancy role, and whoever the new manager may be in 5-6 months' time, whether that's let's say, just hypothetically speaking, a Maurizio Pochettino or an Eric Ten Hag, someone of that ilk who can have that same attacking philosophy that Ralf Rangnick has, and hard working philosophy, then you can see this structure working well, because them two managers I just mentioned there, one thing about them is, and they're similar to Ralph, is their teams work hard on and off the ball. So if you can get that kind of philosophy, get that identity in, then you can see in the next, 2, 3, 4 years that Man United will have an identity back. Because one thing post Sir Alex is, we've had Mourinho, we've had Van Gaal, we've had David Moyes, we've had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and we haven't really, I suppose towards the end of Van Gaal's reign, you kind of see what he was doing, but he didn't have the players. I think if you look at even now, we still don't have that identity. We don't have that type of style of play where you can actually look and say, look, that's what the idea, that's what Man United is. Like, you look at City and you look at Liverpool, for example. Let's bring up them two there. They score the same type of goal week in and week out. Yeah. You know what that pattern of play is going to be. With United, it's more off the cuff, and you just don't know. So I think with Ralph coming in, and whoever that prospective new manager is, it's very important that we get our identity back. Not so much the old United DNA, but get an identity that works. And you have to get players
who work hard. Get the spirit back. That's the main thing. If you get the spirit back, you get the belief. And if you have the belief, you have a lot of power. You have a lot of good energy. And then there's always something, and there always has been something special about this club. And nobody can really describe what it is. And even with Liverpool or even Man City at the moment, with them doing a good job, it's not the same thing with United, because there was always something special. When you've been in the theater of dreams, you played there, you saw a game, whatever, there's always a special feeling around the place and around the club. And at the moment, you don't feel it, and that's the main thing. If you get the spirit and the belief back, also from the supporters, that something is growing back, that something is growing, something is growing, then people will jump back on the train and the train will start running, But at the moment, it's the last few years, as you said, everybody had his own idea, but it was an idea for the moment, maybe for the next 1 or 2 years. And Van Gaal has an approach to football which, in my opinion, is very old-fashioned. So that means also Mourinho, he was very successful 10, 15 years ago. But that's also the very, how should I say, curious thing about managers. Everybody has a period where they are successful. The only guy who really changed it or has a different thing is Guardiola, because he has been very successful over a long decade. Everybody else, like
with Guardiola, over 2 different eras, like with
exactly. Like if you look for Klopp, for example, he has a very short period with Liverpool where he dominated European football, and now it's also going backwards. You had it with Van Gaal, where he had a period where he was successful and there was no team working against them. Basically they could do whatever they want. And that's with Sir Alex, it was the same. 99, 2000, I think there was no team in the world who could have beaten them, even if you put the best 11 players together. And it was because they had a spirit and they had a belief and a really, really good energy. And this has to come back to the place where it belongs.
Definitely. And look, I think with this rebuild, I think we have to be patient. I think patience is key here, because if you have the right players, it will come off eventually. But you have to get it right upstairs too. You can't, you can get a group of individuals together, but you need to have the footballing aspect of the club sorted out upstairs first. Then you need the right manager, and you need everyone to be singing off the same hymn sheet, because it's all well and good having, let's say, a director of football has one idea, the manager has a different idea, and then you're not signing the right type of player to fit the philosophy of the football club. It has to be right at all parts of the football club.
Yeah, and that's a special thing about football, If there was a receipt to be successful, then a lot of people would have done it. But there's something in football nobody can explain, why a team win every game for nearly 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden 1 or 2 players, they're not at their top anymore, or they leave, and the whole team is nowhere near that standard anymore. And that's the thing about football. Like I said before, the spirit and the belief Everybody has to feel it. At that time, when United was so successful, you went into the stadium and you knew that they're going to win. It was just a matter how high. And even the players on the pitch, they knew that, And it was like, it was clear for everybody what was happening. And at the moment, if you watch United, everything can happen, And this is the thing, like you said, you need time to build that confidence, to build that belief, that spirit up again. But you need to have a main idea. And everybody needs to stick that main idea. So everybody's talking about the same thing. And then you have a chance to create something again, And with Ralf Rangnick, he's the same kind of person like Guardiola. They want everybody to follow them. So there's only one opinion and everybody has to follow that one opinion. And if he doesn't, he's out. And I think I like it because you rather go into one direction, even if it's the wrong one, but you go as a whole team and as a whole club, because then the possibility is bigger to win something than to lose, because you're together as a team, as a club, and not as an individual.
Absolutely. And I think in this day and age of football right now, to win trophies and to win the big competitions, everyone needs to work hard. Maybe years before, you maybe could have one or two bystanders in your team where, let's say, collectively 8 or 9 are all on song. Now you need your whole team. You can't have any passengers. I think with United, but rebuilding this football club is everyone just has to be working hard. And this is not just going from the first team. It has to go through the reserve, the 23s, to the youth team. It has to be all there. And it has to be a togetherness there. If there's not, then look, you're going to see maybe the dominance of a City for a while, maybe Liverpool, Chelsea, teams like that. We do have to rebuild the football club. And again, it is going to take a couple of years. But so you have to get the fundamentals right. If you don't get them right, then look, you're going to fall behind. I think that's what we've been victims of in these last couple of years. Marcus, one thing I'd like to touch on is a player who has done so much on the pitch in terms of building his career very quickly, but also has done a lot off the pitch is Marcus Rashford. At the moment, he seems to be struggling in Ralf Rangnick's system as a striker, but also now as a winger. What do you think is going on for Marcus? Do you maybe think he's suffering from maybe some professional burnout? He obviously played for 2 years with injuries and now he's only come back. Do you maybe think it's a confidence issue? What do you think is going wrong for Marcus at this moment in time?
I think he needs a little bit more time to adapt to the style of Ralf Rangnick. I think Marcus Rashford is a great person, a great guy, but he's always been a player who has always been very fragile on the pitch. That means when things go well for him, he has a really, really high standard. But if there's some points going against him, he was nowhere near his standards, and we've seen that over the past few years always. And being injured, is always an indicator for that. So I think also for him, when he realized he was not the first pick for Ralf Rangnick in the first game when he came back, it's for a player like him, it's very dramatic and very, very hard to understand. And I think a player like him needs time to adapt to that and get back to his best. So I think for him, it's not a real issue because he has the quality and he's a really good guy. So he will come back, I'm sure, 100% about it. But he always needs a little bit more time than other players normally because he's very, very sensible and very, very easy to get off his standards, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think look, it's hard for him because he came back from obviously what happened in the Euros as well, and then he had an injury and had surgery not too long after that. So obviously there's a lot of moving parts in these last 6-7 months that have happened so quickly. Do you maybe think if you look at the way he carries his body, he can look at Cristiano and see the way he trained and see how he built himself? Do you maybe think right now would be the right time to maybe try seek advice from Cristiano and see what he done as a young player and maybe try utilize that into his kind of diet, his regime and stuff like that?
I always think it's very difficult to compare two different people. It's like if you compare bananas to apples, because they are two different persons with different characteristics. I know both of them, and they couldn't be more different. Cristiano is very self-confident, and Marcus is a very sensible guy that that has a different opinion about life, I think he wouldn't be living the life Cristiano is living. So I think it's very difficult to compare these two characters. But what Marcus has to find out how he can keep his consistency, because I think as a human being playing professional football, if you are working also on your mental side of the game, it affects your injuries. So I think I felt that also during my career. When I was younger, I had a lot of things that I didn't work on. My consistency on the pitch wasn't as high as it was nearly to the end of my career, and I played much better at the end of my career than in the beginning, and I wasn't as much injured as I was in the beginning. So I think these are points Marcus has to find out for himself. It's very difficult for a professional football player to give a receipt or an idea how he has to do it. He has to find out for himself. He has to work on every side and every aspect of his game. If it's the diet, if it's the mental aspect, if it's the training on and off the pitch, I think these are very important points that he has to find out for himself, and also maybe to be not so affected by decisions by the gaffer, because he's always been very sensible with every gaffer he had, because sometimes he was playing and then the coach put him out for some time. I couldn't remember a coach who was putting him on for nearly one season. So that is always how should I say? It's always an indicator. If you are never a regular starter for a coach, that means you're doing something wrong, and he has to find out for himself. And he needs to do that very quickly, because he has a lot of big abilities. And at the moment, it seems like not he's wasting his career, because he still has done amazing things. But I think he could do much more with the talent he has. Yeah.
And you maybe think maybe it's a time for him to do just a bit of soul searching, and maybe just needs a bit of time out of the side to maybe just reevaluate his game.
That's what I mean. He needs to find out for himself. It's very difficult from outside to give him some advice, because everybody needs to find out for himself. When I was at that point with 22, 23, I was close to retire from football. And then I thought I'd give it a last try and work on the mental side of of football, and try to give it my best, and then give it a shot again. And then things started to turn around. And then from there, I was building up gradually, and I didn't have injuries anymore. And before, I always had injuries that put me on the sidelines for 3 to 6 months, and I didn't know why. And in the end, I find a way to keep myself fit in here and also on the pitch. And he has to find it out for himself. But the people in Manchester love him, so he has a very good point and a very good idea what to do and for what he does it, because he's a great human being, and everybody loves him.
Absolutely. And I think maybe this next couple of months, he just needs to pick himself back up, and he has the quality. He's a very good footballer, and he's a very good person as well, as you mentioned. So hopefully he can pick it back up, and form is temporary and class is permanent. And I think, look, we will see him come back to his best, hopefully in the near future. And he can start scoring goals and creating chances for us again, because with this system, he can be a vital player for us.
Yeah, and also with the agility, yes. I mean, he's a kind of player Ralf Rangnick is looking for, and he's also not that old that he's going to stick to his principles when the coach tell him something else to do, So he's also a very intelligent player. That means he also works for the team. He's a team player, and normally he's a type of player Ralf Rangnick is looking for. And therefore, I'm also a little bit surprised that in the beginning he wasn't counting on him. But we don't see it every day in training, how he behaves. We don't know how his injury report is. So it's very difficult for us from the outside to have an opinion on him,
And just the final one for you, Marcus, just with regards to what Ralf Rangnick can achieve this season, because obviously, look, we're still in the FA Cup. We've Atletico Madrid coming up in the last 16, the Champions League, and we all, since about October, the league title has been gone, but we're still kind of fighting for Champions League places now between now and the end of the season. With the limited time that Ralf has working with these players between now and the end of the season, what would you consider success for Ralf Rangnick for the rest of this season?
For me, it was never the question if they win the league, because as a team they are too fragile. As I told you before,
Yeah.
they're lacking a lot of leadership and a lot of mentality and therefore consistency. And with the likes of Liverpool and Chelsea and obviously City, they're at a different point. They have different players at the peak of their profession, so it's very difficult to compete with them. But I think for United, it's very important to build that identity back again, to get back the ideas of Ralf Rangnick has, to implement them into the players and find out who are the players to work for after the summer, because that's the main idea. Does it make sense to have Ronaldo still there? Does it make sense with the two of them, with Bruno and Ronaldo? Because maybe two players they are too much if you want to play a very intensive, aggressive, counter-attacking football in some parts. Because Ralf Rangnick loves to do that. Sometimes he loves to give the ball away on purpose to put that press on the other team. But I don't know if the players like Pogba, Fernandes, and Ronaldo they are willing to do that at their age. So these are the points that the club and therefore also the coach has to find out. And obviously the cup titles, I think they're there to win. The FA Cup, you don't need to be very consistent. You also need to win the games and to build a mentality. The same with Champions League. I don't want to say they are the favorites to win the Champions League, but if you build in the right mentality and you have your main players fit in February, March, April, when it's crunching time, you never know. Everything can happen. We saw that before. We saw it with Tottenham when they had an amazing Champions League campaign where nobody thought of. So why not? They have the quality in many aspects. And if you find the right character and the right mentality on the right day, everything is possible. But about the league, we shouldn't talk about the league, I think, this year. And also next year, it will be very difficult.
Yeah, I think, as I said, like the league was gone in October. Like as soon as we started losing them couple of games on the bounce, we had to forget about it. Like, and I think top four for us this season, I think bare minimum is top four. And as you said, I think challenge
to qualify for the Champions League. That's a challenge, like you said, to get back in the Champions League position. Yeah,
I think that is going to be a challenge. You look at West Ham, you look at Spurs, you look at Arsenal are coming back. Chelsea are up there. Like you look at these teams. Spurs there under Antonio Conte as well. Like it's going to be hard for United. And I think we need to hit the ground running, because if you look at the fixture list, we don't play any of the big six till March, April. But then until between March, April, May, then all the fixtures.
But it's a good time to build a mentality, in this time, to get back the consistency, to get that belief and that spirit back in the dressing room, in the whole club, and then which players you can count on, and then you can divide the players who want to go that way with you and the players who don't want to do that. And that's the time now they need to use, and to take the time also to find out who's there for the future.
Absolutely. And I think these 6 months are going to be huge. I think then when you look at next season, you look at the summer, I think we've probably the biggest rebuild since Sir Alex starts then, in terms of...
Good, we say that every year, to be honest, but...
I think this is right, though. If you look at the current players we have, though, like there is a lot more quality there now compared to, let's say, 2-3 years ago. Like you have the Mason Greenwoods, you have the Marcus Rashfords, you have...
Yeah, but United, they've never been lacking quality in my opinion. They've been lacking mentality, which is even more difficult to find in nowadays. I wouldn't say Keane was the best midfielder ever on the planet, but he had the right mentality, and he had the feeling for the team what he had to do. And these things are lacking at the moment. That they have good individual quality players. United has that. Tottenham has that as well. But they're lacking the team spirit and the team identity. And this is the thing they need to be aware in the next weeks and months. And from there on, like you said, in summer, maybe there need to be a breaking point again, as we saw it many years now before on the Mourinho, on the Van Gaal, on the Ole. There was always a time when we said, they have to build up new. But I think now with Ralf Rangnick being in a strategic position, I think it really, it can be the really changing point for the last 20, 30 years maybe.
Yeah, I think this summer is where we're going to see like the changing of the guard almost, and then it's a new structure that this football club hasn't had since Sir Alex and David Gill left. So I think this is where it's finally a time now where we have a bit of structure. It's just about implementing it now in the summer and identifying the right type of player, and hopefully them talks are happening behind closed doors right now to get that in motion for the summer.
Yeah, I think so. As I know, Ralf Rangnick is always a very dominant person, as I told you. Also in Germany, he always been very demanding in his ideas, and I think otherwise he wouldn't have signed for the club if the club is not willing to do what his idea or his willings are. So I think we will see more in the summer what the idea or what the identity of the club will be than now in winter, because in winter it's always difficult to find the right players for the right price,
Yeah, I think bar the exception, I think obviously Zakaria being available for £6 million. Other than that, I think if you look at the other players who we ideally like in the team, looking at them teams, they're going to demand a premium even now and the summer as well. And I think it's harder to get these players because if we're looking at players like Declan Rice, if we're looking at players so like Hayadara, you're looking at players like that, these are teams who are still fighting in Europe.
Yeah, it's true. But with Zakaria, he also needs time, where he never played in English football. He needs time to adapt to the style of Ralf Rangnick, as they are playing a different kind of football in the Bundesliga. So he also needs time, but he has the legs and he has the mentality. So he's definitely one of them players who can do it.
Yeah, and I do watch a bit of Bundesliga football, and from seeing Zakaria, how his physical presence is there, and like as you said, he has the legs, he breaks up play. I think he's someone who can definitely help us adapt this style. And as Lee Lawrence says here as well in the comments, Lee says this is why I like Fred. He's not the best footballer, but he has one of the best attitudes in the squad.
That's true. He has. But on the other side, he's if you watch the balls, the possession, he loses during a game. It's very difficult for a team, and the team suffers a lot with him. Of course, he does a lot of good things, but on the other side, with a player of him being in that position, with on that position of the field, you expect more influence, like more good decisions. I always said it was for me as a young player, it was so amazing what decisions Scholesy and Keane took in the middle of the park. Nearly every decision they took and they make was 100% spot on. And this is one of the biggest problems United was facing the past few years. They were losing too many balls too easily, and that United was caught too many times out of possession when they lost the ball, and that makes it very difficult. And if you don't have that quality on the pitch, it makes it difficult.
Yeah, I think with this anyway, regardless of whether it's Ten Hag or Rangnick or whoever it may be in charge in the summer, we need to get players who are better at retaining possession and who can also press and counter press, because if you want to implement that, you need to have the right bodies in there. Fred can be a good squad player for certain games. I think he can be a squad player, but
I think so too. Yeah.
If you're talking about getting back to the top, though, you need that next level, in terms of that. So I think maybe in the summer, a central midfield player is vital to what we need to do. But also, I think another centre back as well. I think we need a commanding centre back beside Raphael Varane as well to really kind of give us a good spine. I think that's what you need, because any team who wants to be successful need to have a good spine, and at the moment, our spine at the moment isn't there yet. So I think we do need to adapt to that. But on further podcasts, I'm sure myself and Marcus will discuss that further. And for you guys, do smash a like in the video, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 4K, so do absolutely show us the support. I know you guys always do. What we will do on next week's podcast is we will review the Aston Villa game. We're going to talk about the performances, what players stood out, but then also we'll talk about more about Marcus's time at Manchester United. And we're going to deep dive into stories about training. We're going to talk about matches and his favourite moments. So do let us know if you have any questions for Marcus for next week's podcast. Do let us know in the comments, but also drop them on Twitter as well, and we will come to them questions on next week's podcast. But thanks very much, Marcus, for coming on this evening. I'm sure we'll have plenty of good conversations over these next coming months here on Talk the Devils. But until then, guys, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, Keane. Thank you, guys.